So in 2021, you guys put out Spiritual Machines 2. So this is a sequel to the beloved double platinum concept album from 2000. So that original album had the hit singles In Repair, Life, and Right Behind You, Mafia. When did the idea of making a sequel to that beloved album start to fester, start to take hold?
Well, we started recording for that album cycle before the world shut down with COVID. We were out with Live in Bush doing like an amphitheater tour through the States in 2019. And we had locked in to work with a guy named Dave Sidik, who was in a band called TV on the Radio. He produced the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and Weezer and a bunch of really cool stuff.
He did Beyonce and Jay-Z. He did some stuff with them.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. But we ended up at his studio and we were working on Stop Making Stupid People Famous. That was the first song that we finished for that record. So that kind of like laid the groundwork for that. I'm not 100% sure when the concept for Spiritual Machines 2 really came to fruition. I just know that the rest of the record, because of the gravity of what was going on with the world at that time, we had to do it all remote. So it was like cutting drums, sending them to Los Angeles with the time change and the different projects the producers were working on, waiting for them to listen to stuff, being like, no, 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 change this part. And I'm like, okay, good thing I didn't move my mics for 2 days and go and like try to like punch in and make things work. It was a very different record to make and like challenging in the way that like when you're hashing parts out as a band together, you're obviously feeding off each other and creating something in the room in the moment. And you don't have that opportunity when everything is done separately. You're trying to find the beauty in the moments without having the fuel of other people, if that makes sense.
So the album had two singles. You mentioned already Stop Making Stupid People Famous. The other one was Future Disease. Was there a fear in making a sequel to an album that people love so much?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I just found it really cool to, try to continue the legacy of that record, especially with like the Ray Kurzweil stuff. And I don't know if you know, but a lot of those like the tracks where Ray is talking, I did like a lot of that sound design underneath it. So like getting to like create those weird sounds and like create those moments of something that kind of harks back to something I grew up on was like incredible.
You mentioned this was in the middle of the pandemic. So
Yeah.
the pandemic, there's so much fear and chaos and uncertainty and all these things. Did it feel cathartic to release something positive during such a negative and strange time?
Yeah, totally. I feel like that's a positivity coming from Rain that really it was beautiful and it really helped. I just loved the way that it wasn't dark and it was, especially with like Kurzweil's predictions and stuff, just being like the future isn't chaotic. It doesn't have to be chaotic. It can all come together for the greater good.
We have a fan question from John Michael Liliev. His question is, what is a moment where you sat there behind the kit and just thought, wow, I can't believe I get to do this?
It happens sometimes. Like I don't know, as a performer, you have to learn that it's never gonna always be perfect. There's moments that make you realize why you do it. It makes you realize that like it can click and be amazing. I even had that on this last tour, a couple of shows where I'm looking out and I'm like just so thankful that this is like happening right now. As hard as it is being away from everything you love, it's just there's so many people that wish they could be in that moment that like if you don't have that little moment of clarity knowing that you're thankful for it, then what's it worth? And even back to like my first, I think it was my first OLP show, we were playing with Rob Thomas at the Oxford Stomp in Calgary, and I looked out and it was one of those again being like I'm so thankful for this. So it does happen when things click properly.
So, in listening to that album, I believe I hear some programmed drums, which makes sense for an album about technology and machines and that kind of stuff. Is programming something that drummers these days they have to learn? Like that has to be a tool in the toolkit besides just being a great drummer that you have to learn technology and programming and samples and computers?
I think you can, some people can get away without doing it depending on the genre and like what they're doing with it. But that's just not me. I've produced a lot of records, mixed records, and been on the other side of it. So the whole programming thing, I really embraced. A lot of the like programming stuff, especially with Spiritual Machines 2, is like overlaid over actual drums and stuff to try to like tie into that sound. I don't know if like I don't think if you're like playing in a jazz band you necessarily need to know how to make an 808 sound good, but like to have a broader stroke, it's probably something that is totally intuitive with what is going on.
So we mentioned original Our Lady Peace guitarist Mike Turner a little bit earlier in the interview. He came back to be a part of this album because he had a big part to do with the original Spiritual Machines album. So this
Yeah.
is he came back, he helped work on this album. It's his first since 2002, Gravity in 2002. A couple questions. What was his involvement in this album and what was it like to have the OG back for that process?
I believe his involvement on the record was one of those Kurzweil songs or Kurzweil tracks where he's talking. He did the music underneath one of those. His biggest impact with that whole time period was the tour because we did the Wonderful Future tour, did it in two different legs, but we had these huge holographic boxes on stage, which were awesome. Maybe a little bit of a pain in the ass, but they were pretty awesome. And for the lion's share of the shows, Turner wasn't there, but his holograph was there for some of the songs, which was so badass. But some of the shows, like the bigger markets, I think it was like Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, Turner actually came out to those shows. So he would start as a
Nice.
holograph and then he would walk on stage as like a reveal, which was crazy.
People
Like
probably didn't expect that at all after all this
totally,
time.
people didn't expect that. And it's just, some of those older songs, it's just they're in his fingers the way he plays them. And like it's the same as like, Jimmy Chamberlain with the Pumpkins when you hear him play those older songs. Like no one else sounds like that. As much as anyone wants to try to sound like that, it's like it's just inherent in their being and their soul that like that's just what they sound like. So it was crazy to actually hear that. And Turner's such a great guy too. I've had a long history with him.
So I find that the equivalent of us talking about Jeremy Taggart and his very unique drum playing on those original albums, I find Mike Turner is the exact same for guitar. Like his guitar
Totally.
playing is so unique that those, I guess up until Gravity, those albums, the guitar is a part of what made the Our Lady Peace sound so unique back then. Do you agree with that? It's a
100%.
very different guitar playing.
100%, man. Yeah, it was just the way that he thought of notes and chords. It was extremely unique. And for that time period in music, for when that record came out, like it was a real integral part of what made those songs. Totally.
So we have a fan question. This is from Noelle Gray, and she was actually in an Our Lady Peace music video for a song called The Right Stuff off of the deluxe edition of Burn Burn. So Noelle asks, what is the band you have yet to work with that would be a dream come true?
Oh man, that's a hard one. Nine Inch Nails, maybe. I love that band. I just love like heavy music when it connects. And it doesn't have to be like a lot of notes. It's just there's a mood with it, And I think Trent Reznor is so talented. Like anything that guy touches. I think that would be like the ultimate. That or like Guns N' Roses. Again, that would be a full circle thing. Or Brian Adams. I love Brian Adams a bit too much.
That's awesome. I was going to get my dad tickets for his birthday to the Eagles that were playing Ottawa, but I think nosebleeds are normally $60, $80 for a lot of concerts. It's changed a bit during the pandemic, but I was trying to get just nosebleeds and it was, I don't know, 300, 400, $500 for nosebleeds to the Eagles. I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know if I or he likes them that much. And then Brian Adams announces he's playing the arena and tickets are like $30 and we're like, what? So I get him tickets and we go, and he plays for 2 hours and every song is the biggest hit single you've ever heard. Like he can play just singles. And my dad
Oh,
turns to me and he's like, "This is a soundtrack of my life." That's how I know I picked the right concert. So
oh
Bryan Adams
man.
is amazing. And then when you mentioned Nine Inch Nails, I always say the best concert I've ever seen in my life was Nine Inch Nails. And I was at that show because I was a Queens of the Stone Age fan. So it was Death from Above 1979, Queens of the Stone Age, Nine Inch Nails. So I'm there
Wow.
for Queens of the Stone Age. I'm familiar with Nine Inch Nails at that point. I respect them, but I'm not a fan. And
Totally.
they took someone that wasn't there as a fan, and it was by far the best thing I've ever experienced in my life. Every part of it, the songs, the performances, the audio, the visual, the videos, the not banter because he's not talking a lot, but just the way he communicates with the crowd. You could feel a touch of genius on
Totally.
everything involved in that concert, and you know that genius is Trent Reznor.
100%. Like he puts the work and the time into it too. I'm before they went out when Freeze was in the band, I had heard they were in rehearsals for something like 6 months. Like they
Jeez.
put so much time into like the minutia of everything, which is incredible. But that's like that shows. Like that's not like no one's riding on the seat of their pants or anything or flying on the seat of their pants in that situation. Everyone's like knows every second of what's going to happen. At that point, you can kind of muscle memory everything, and it's like you don't have to think, which is the best way to be able to perform.
And then I saw them again. So I was in Montreal, and then years later, I saw them at a festival in Philly, and somehow it's still Queens of the Stone Age and Nine Inch Nails as the two headliners.
No
And
way.
and that Nine Inch Nails show was completely different from the one in Montreal. And I would say that's those two are the two best shows I've ever seen. Like they can't
Wow.
miss. They're so good.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Nice, man.